My son took me camping, then left me alone in the mountains when I couldn't stand. I heard him say, "If she wants to survive, she'll figure it out." He left me alone briefly on a familiar trail, insisting I practice survival skills, not realizing how unsteady I was. That night in the Rocky Mountains, everything changed. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Emily Carrington. I was 16. I remember clutching the cheap multi-tool he handed me. Its metal cold against my palm. "Go grab some real firewood," he said, his voice calm, almost casual. "Not that damp junk by the campsite. Time for you to learn how to take care of yourself." I blinked at him, unsure if this was a planned test of independence, a cruel joke, or genuine recklessness. The SUV rumbled to life behind me as I staggered down the trail, arms full of small branches, knees wobbling, the dark pressed in from all sides. The forest alive with every snap of a twig underfoot. My phone flashed 15%. No signal. I told myself it was just a lesson, something teenagers are supposed to learn, yet. Deep down, the cold in his eyes as he glanced back from the driver's seat whispered a different story. When I returned to the campsite 40 minutes later, I froze. The tent was half-packed. The cooler was loaded into the back. My backpack lay on the ground. Everything else gone. He hadn't even looked back. The words repeated in my mind. "If she wants to survive, she'll figure it out." I dropped the firewood and laughed. A short, sharp sound that bounced off the trees. Surely he couldn't be serious. Surely he wasn't leaving me here. But the SUV's headlights swung past, then vanished down the dirt road. The echo of the tires on gravel lingered longer than I did. I hunched over my backpack, heart hammering, and realized that the lesson wasn't just about survival skills. It was about being on my own, truly alone, and testing whether I could navigate the world when everything familiar had been stripped away. I took a slow breath, adjusted the strap of my pack, and started moving toward the shadowed path that would take me deeper into the mountains. The night was just beginning. I trudged along the trail, arms full of firewood, and caught him glancing back with that same unreadable expression. "Hurry up." "Emily," he said, voice smooth but clipped. "We don't have all night." I swallowed, feeling a lump in my throat. "I'm coming," I muttered, fumbling with the branches. My knees wobbled, but I didn't want him to see me falter. He zipped the tent closed without looking at me. "You said you could handle this," he added, sliding the cooler into the SUV. "Prove it." I froze for a fraction of a second, heat rising to my cheeks. Prove it. Prove survival skills. Prove I could follow instructions under pressure. I clenched the firewood tighter, my fingers pressing into the rough bark. "Don't just stand there," he said, stepping toward the SUV. Time's wasting. I took a hesitant step forward. I'm moving." "Good," he said, voice casual again. But I heard the subtle edge underneath, a sharpness that made me pause. He wasn't just giving instructions. Every motion, every word, felt deliberate, measured, like he'd rehearsed this moment, like he knew exactly how far to push me. I glanced at the SUV one more time. His hand lingered on the door, the engine humming softly. "Emily," he said, almost conversational. "Remember if you can't manage it. That's on you." I swallowed hard, sensing the shift. The lesson had changed. It was no longer about firewood or a cold night in the Rockies. It was about control. And I could feel the weight of it pressing down. I adjusted the straps of my pack and took another step. My heart thudded, each beat marking the slow realization. This wasn't just a tough lesson. Something else was coming, and I wouldn't be ready. The SUV's engine hummed one last time before it drove off, tires crunching over gravel, leaving me in the dark. My legs trembled, nearly giving out beneath me, and I dropped the firewood I'd been carrying. 15% battery on my phone blinked weakly. No signal, just that little SOS icon taunting me. I pressed the multi-tool into my palm again, gripping it like a lifeline, though I don't know why. I shuffled toward the trail, trying not to let my knees buckle. Emily, I whispered to myself, you got this. The headlights disappeared, swallowed by the curve in the road. Silence followed, heavier than the cold that seeped through my jacket. I stepped over rocks, branches snagging my hoodie, each sound amplified in the emptiness. Every crack of wood underfoot made me jump. I thought I heard voices from the tent, but it was just the wind, the cooler, the tent. My backpack all gone except what I held. He'd left me with the bare minimum 2 bottles of water, 3 granola bars, a thin hoodie, a plastic poncho, and the multi-tool. Not a map, not a charger, not even a flashlight. I had a phone light. And he left me to navigate a familiar short trail alone. I bent to retrieve the branches I'd dropped, shoving them into my arms again, as if that would make me stronger. This is fine, I muttered, though my teeth chattered. Each step felt heavier than the last. I tried retracing the road, weakly following the dirt path I remembered from arriving. But the trees all looked the same. Shadows swallowed landmarks. And the beam from my phone barely stretched 10 feet ahead. I kept thinking about every last scene in every survival story I'd mocked before, now feeling the fear creeping into every muscle. Hour after hour, I moved slowly, stopping often to catch my breath. My legs shook so badly I worried I'd collapse. Every sound a bird, a rustling bush. The snap of a twig set my heart racing. I tried to convince myself he'd circle back, check on me, laugh at some lesson learned moment. But deep down, I knew the lesson was over. I was alone. The night pressed down, cold and unrelenting. I leaned against a thick tree, knees pulled to my chest. Clinging to the branches I carried like a shield, I whispered his words over and over. If she wants to survive, she'll figure it out. The forest stayed silent. The SUV was gone, and I was left with nothing but the slow, terrifying realization that he meant it. My son took me camping. He drove away. I huddled against a thick tree, dragging a few fallen branches into a rough circle around me. My fingers were numb, the thin hoodie barely keeping the cold out. I ripped open one of the granola bars and chewed slowly, listening. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made my heart lurch. This is stupid, I muttered to myself, voice trembling. I can't believe he left me here. The words sounded weak even to me. I kicked at a rock, watching it tumble down the slope. I reached for the bottles of water, shaking as I unscrewed the cap. Small sips, careful not to finish too fast. I repeated the mantra he'd left me with, if she wants to survive, she'll figure it out. It was supposed to be a lesson. Now it felt like a threat. I shuffled along the edge of the clearing, checking bushes for safe berries. My phone lit up a weak cone of light, barely enough to see the ground at my feet. I scanned the plants, remembering the biology app from school. Safe, unsafe, unknown. I picked only the safe ones. Chewing slowly, tasting the faint sweetness and bitterness. The night grew colder. My teeth chattered. I tried to keep moving, dragging myself a few steps at a time, then collapsed against the tree again. Emily, get it together, I whispered. You're stronger than this. The forest remained silent, but every crack, every rustle made my body jump. Shadows stretched in impossible shapes. I pressed the multi-tool in my palm, feeling its weight and reminding myself I had something to hold on to, even if it was useless against bears or falling rocks. I forced myself to take inventory: 2 bottles of water, 3 granola bars, a hoodie, a poncho, the multi-tool, no map, no charger, no flashlight, nothing else. Alone. I whispered his words again, tasting their cruelty on my tongue. He meant it. The lesson wasn't optional. He left me to figure it out, and I would. I clenched the multi-tool, swallowing the fear that threatened to choke me. One night to survive. That was all that mattered. I sank to the ground, back against the tree, still clutching the multi-tool. The firewood I carried felt heavier now, like every branch reminded me of his words. If she wants to survive, she'll figure it out. Not a lesson, a test. It hit me slowly, like a stone rolling downhill. He hadn't left me here for practice, for fun, for some twisted idea of growth. He wanted control over me, over everything I could touch, everything I had a claim to. My hands shook as I thought of the insurance policies my father had taken out years ago, the trust fund tied to my name, the accounts he'd never let me touch. Every decision he made tonight seemed to line up perfectly, not randomly cruel, but calculated. I'd been cornered, forced into weakness so he could step in, manipulate, and gain what he couldn't earn. You think this is about survival, I whispered, voice low. The forest gave no answer. He'd made it about leverage, about power. He'd engineered fear into currency. I traced my fingers over the straps of my pack, over the water bottles, the granola bars. Everything I had, everything he left, felt like a message. He wanted me distracted, exhausted, broken. He wanted the upper hand before I even realized he'd been holding it all along. I clenched the multi-tool, pressing it into my palm. I won't be fooled. I won't be weak. I understood now that survival wasn't just about finding water or berries. It was about seeing through him, seeing the truth of his plan, and keeping myself intact. And in that dark clearing, a thought burned. Every step he forced me to take tonight was measured. Every choice he let me make led me closer to his control. I wasn't just surviving the mountains anymore, I was surviving him. Hey! Over here, a voice called sharply. My legs trembled as I dragged myself toward it. 3 hikers appeared, their packs heavy, jackets bright. One rushed forward, hand on my shoulder. You're alone, he asked, concern tight in his voice. Are you hurt? I shook my head, swallowing against the lump in my throat. No, just tired. Another hiker handed me a foil blanket. Sit, drink this. She pressed a protein bar into my hands. My fingers shook so badly I dropped it once before managing a bite. Who left you out here? The first hiker asked. Voice low, incredulous. Parents. I hesitated, fear and shame knotting my stomach. Yes, my parent. In a misguided lesson, the words sounded small, weak, but they were true. He nodded, not judgmental, just factual. We'll get you back to the ranger station. You're safe now. I sank onto a fallen log, heart hammering, wrapped in the blanket. Relief and anger collided in me. Safe. Yes, but abandoned, betrayed, manipulated. Every step I took alone, every hour he let me struggle, confirmed what I'd suspected. He'd done this deliberately. And as I followed the hikers down the trail, my mind spun. Could I trust anyone again? Even my own family had left me to fend for myself. My Aunt Linda's door swung open before I could knock. Emily, she said, pulling me into a hug that hurt my ribs. But I let her hold me anyway. You're safe now. I nodded, voice tight. Thanks for letting me stay inside. I unpacked my backpack slowly, counting my supplies, 2 bottles of water, 3 granola bars, the thin hoodie, the poncho, the multi-tool. Everything else I'd carried in the mountains felt like a memory, a lesson I didn't ask for. I blocked him. I said, almost to myself, every phone number, every account. Linda's eyes softened. Good. You need space. You need control. I swallowed hard. I'm thinking ahead. I'm not just surviving anymore. I need to make sure he can't. My voice caught. Take what's mine. Anything. She nodded, placing a hand on mine. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone. I felt a flicker of determination. Living with her wasn't just safety. It was a chance to rebuild, to be strategic, to reclaim my life. I listed out small steps in my head: bank accounts, legal documents, insurance papers. I'd be ready when the time came, for the first time since he left me in the mountains. I felt a sliver of power, distance, yes, but preparation would be my real shield. Would distance be enough to protect me? I clenched my fists and decided it would have to. The bell above the cafe door chimed, and I glanced up from the espresso machine, wiping my hands on a towel. He was there. My son. I froze mid-motion. His shoulders slumped, eyes red. And for a second, I didn't breathe. Emily, he said, voice cracking. I'm sorry. I stayed behind the counter, steadying myself. You're crying in front of customers, I said. My voice was calm, but inside, my chest was hammering. Is this supposed to make me feel something? He looked at me, swallowing. I didn't mean, I thought I was doing the right thing. His words faltered, ragged. I shook my head slowly. You thought leaving me in the mountains when I couldn't stand was the right thing. He flinched, avoiding my gaze. It was, I wanted you to learn, to be strong. Strong, I repeated. Stepping closer, I asked. Strong, you left me alone in the mountains under the guise of teaching survival. But the control, the power over my inheritance, my finances, that was your real lesson, wasn't it? He flinched again, and for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who had smiled as I struggled with firewood, the one who had driven away without looking back. But that version was gone. This man, 35 now, tried to hide behind tears and half apologies. I didn't think. You didn't think I cut in. You planned it, every word, every movement, calculated. That's why you acted like it was a lesson. It was about control. Don't pretend it wasn't. His lips trembled. Emily, please, I held up a hand, stopping him. No, I won't let you manipulate me again. Not now. Not ever. He sank onto the chair by the wall, head in his hands. Quiet, except for soft, uneven sobs. The cafe buzzed around us. Indifferent. I straightened my apron, exhaling slowly, tasting the faint copper of anger on my tongue. Could I face him without losing control? I did. I stood there, unwavering, letting him cry, letting the weight of what he had done hang between us, solid and undeniable. The moment wasn't about forgiveness. It was about clarity. I folded my arms, keeping my voice steady. I told you once, you don't get to control me. Not my life, not my money, not my choices. He looked up, sobbing, eyes wide. Emily, please. I just wanted to stop. I said sharply, I'm done listening to excuses. Leaving me in the mountains when I couldn't stand. Driving away, pretending it was a lesson, it's abuse, and I won't let it continue. His hands shook as he reached toward me. I stepped back. The counter between us. Any further contact emails, calls, messages to my friends, everything gets documented. Police, lawyers, everything. I didn't mean to. You did. I interrupted. Every move was planned, every word measured. You thought you could manipulate me, make me powerless. make me doubt myself. Not anymore. He sank onto the chair, shoulders slumping. Quiet sobs shook his body. Emily, I can fix it. You can't, I said, tone final. You can take responsibility. Go to therapy. Fix yourself, but you don't get me. Not my trust, not my life, not my boundaries. I leaned against the counter, letting him cry, letting him absorb the weight of his actions. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity, about survival beyond fear, beyond manipulation. Would he finally stop or push even harder? I clenched my fists, knowing the next steps were mine to control. I watched him sit in the chair, shoulders slumped, as the cafe hummed around us. Every sob, every tremor, marked the weight of his choices. I had made the call to the insurance company, filed reports with the local authorities, and documented everything. The truth was no longer mine alone, it was out there, ready to hold him accountable. You understand? Right, I said quietly. This isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. He nodded, voice breaking. I get it. I didn't think you thought, I said, cutting him off, but thinking doesn't undo what you did. Leaving me in the mountains, manipulating my inheritance, pretending it was a lesson. Those are your choices. You're responsible for all of them. The phone buzzed with confirmation emails, legal notices served, messages from the insurance company acknowledging my report. People he'd tried to manipulate now questioned him. Over the next few days, the phone buzzed with confirmation emails, legal notices, and insurance acknowledgments. He flinched at each notification, realizing the reach of his actions. I'm done controlling your life. I continued, voice firm but calm. Therapy, consequences, self-reflection, those are yours. You don't get me back. You don't get my trust, my freedom, my peace. He lowered his head, silent, absorbed by the gravity he had created. I straightened my apron, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease. I'd survived the mountains, survived betrayal, and reclaimed my power. I leaned against the counter, letting the reality settle. Boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about survival. Respecting them is the difference between fear and freedom, manipulation and control. Truth, documented and undeniable, had its own justice. I smiled faintly, thinking of the teenager I once was, left alone in the Rockies, and the woman I had become, standing tall amid witnesses, asserting her life. If you've ever been forced to survive against odds, share this story or your own. Stand firm, document the truth, and never let fear decide your boundaries. Like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more real-life stories about survival, courage, and reclaiming control. Could truth and justice finally prevail for me? They had, and it was enough.